What's up, everybody? It is the greatest travel podcast in the universe, potentially. And we're here with my dear friend, Harry Symeou, which I always get nervous I pronounce it correctly. Was that all right?
Yeah, that'll do. That'll do.
Yeah, close. Your English accent, it throws me off how do you say it and then how I say it and my Canadian side. And Harry is like a broadcaster supreme. He works for TalkSport, BBC, CNN, Sky Sports, 90 Minutes, just everywhere and anywhere. He's basically like the ESPN and Fox Sports of the USA and all that kind of. He's worked for all of them, so he's like the big dog. Very excited to have him. We met in Las Vegas at a soccer. We'll call football. We'll call soccer football from here on out, everyone. So just get it wired in. We met at a football conference, and he was one of the helpful hosts and VIPs along with his other mates. So it was a great time. I had one of the better party nights of my life on our trip.
Yeah, it was a great trip. It was really, really good, and it was great to meet you guys and spend some time with you. And yeah, thank you for putting that event together because it was amazing, and I'll never forget it. You know, it was great. As you said, we had a
Yeah.
great party night, and yeah, that's exactly the way to describe it. And I have to say, when I got back from that trip to Las Vegas, it took me about 2 or 3 weeks to be satisfied with my normal life again, to accept that, this is what life actually is and not what we've just been doing for the last 3 or 4 days. So, yeah, it was great to meet you. And this is very much the best travel podcast out there. There's no ifs, maybes about it.
Thank you. And yeah, it took me a week to like recover. I think I laid in bed for one straight week. I did like a couple emails from bed, but aside from that, I was just out. I was dead to the world. I ended up leaving the game at halftime. I don't tell anyone, but I was like, I need to go home. I can't do this. I think I told you guys. I was like, I'm not like the whole point of the whole convention was to watch the game at the end. And at half, I was like, look, I did my job. I'm going home. I can't sit in these seats anymore and listen to people scream in my ears. So, but yeah, today we're adding to the sports travel side of things where we're going to London. So if you ever wanted to go on a boys or girls trip to London to watch some sporting events, whether that's the NFL or you want to watch some football, then this is it for you. I mean, we're going to talk Wembley. If you're, hopefully, I don't know if I know all the London teams, so correct me. Is there 5 in the Premier League?
Currently in the Premier
I'll
League,
try to
you've
name
got.
them. I'll say
Go on, I'll let you
Arsenal.
name them.
Yeah, I know I'm going to screw. There's probably one I'm forgetting that's easy, and then one I didn't even know. Arsenal, which is your team. Spurs, Tottenham, Chelsea, Fulham. Is there one I'm missing? I'm nervous to say
You're
it.
missing. You're missing
2?
3 more. 3 more.
Oh, West Ham.
Yep.
And I feel like there's an easy one that I'm just not thinking about. Go ahead. What are the other 2 I'm missing?
Crystal Palace and Brentford are
I
the
never
2
would
that
have
you're
guessed
missing.
those. That's very ignorant
And
of me. I
then,
never would have guessed.
and then if you drop down to the Championship division, which is the division below the Premier League, at the moment you've got Queen's Park Rangers there, you've got Millwall there. So London, in terms of football, is very much a city that you want to be in. There's not too big a distance between the grounds. And if you drop down another division, you've got Charlton Athletic, who used to be in the Premier League not too long ago, Leyton Orient as well. So there's so many London clubs that there's always football to get along to at the weekend. And if you don't mind dropping down a division as well, just if the fixtures don't work out for you, then you can have some great experiences. Because even with some of those clubs in the second tier, you're talking about crowds of 30 plus thousand people at times, which is amazing.
Yeah, I know. I was looking at a trip last year, and there was one of my friends is a Spurs fan, and he was like, "Oh, well, he wanted to go to that," but we were looking at the United game at Wembley, the League Cup final, I think it was.
Yep.
And yeah, and it was like West Ham. No, it wasn't a Spurs fan. It was a Liverpool fan. They're playing at West Ham, so it's kind of nice. Like you said, if you want to come to London, you could hypothetically see like a game on Friday or a game on, or I guess Saturday, a game on Sunday, and a game on Monday, depending if you got lucky enough. And there's a ton going on. So
You can, and that's the brilliant thing about London as a city, but as a footballing city in particular, because
Mm.
as I say, there's so many different grounds you can go to, and they'll bring you different experiences. So,
Yeah.
you want to go top end Premier League, you're going to go to Arsenal, you're going to go to Chelsea, you're going to go to Tottenham. You want to go sort of mid level Premier League where it's probably easier to get tickets, maybe more affordable if you're doing it on a budget. You've got the likes of Crystal Palace and Brentford are a really good option for that. Fulham, for some strange reason, charge crazy prices for their tickets. It's because of the part of town that Fulham's
I was
in.
gonna say, isn't
It's
it in like
right
the
on the
ritzy
River
part of
Thames.
town? Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. It's right on the River Thames as well. To be there on a sunny day is unrivaled. It's a fantastic place to go and watch football, but it's really expensive, and the standard's not that great, I have to be honest.
Yeah, I bet. What is it? Just the area of town that you grew up in that be like? It also, I guess, if your dad was a fan, but what's kind of like the driving factor behind what team you support? Is area town kind of a big one, and then just family?
Yeah, I think generally you'll find that most of the supporters, fans in London, sort of side with teams that they kind of live close to. So
Hmm.
I live in the North London area, which is the territory of Arsenal and Tottenham, and pretty much everybody around here supports Arsenal or Tottenham. There's a few Manchester
Hmm.
United supporters and Liverpool supporters, but that's miles away. And I think what you get in England is, yes, you get worldwide fans and you get fans that support teams from different cities, but generally speaking, fans tend to stick with the teams in their city because it will be a part of sort of the way they were brought up and the way they grew up and the school they went to and things like that. So for me, my parents are originally from Cyprus, but my dad and his family, when they sort of arrived in London, they settled in the North London area, very very close to where Arsenal are based. And at that time, um, football wasn't as inclusive as it is today. There were what we call firms, which are sort of hooligan groups. I
Yeah.
don't know if you have that term in the States, but groups of fans that would go to matches looking for trouble, not for actual football.
Yeah.
And they would meet up and they would fight. And there's a few clubs in London that have really fierce rivalries because of that history. But Arsenal was a club that sort of a lot of that generation of people that came over to the UK felt like they could go and watch without feeling that threat, without feeling any
Mm.
racism, without feeling any of that stuff. And that's why you'll find a lot of the immigrant population of London supports Arsenal because of that reason. I'm not
Oh.
saying that they've still got this problem now, but the
Yeah.
likes of Chelsea in the past had this as a big problem.
Hmm.
West Ham had it as a problem. Millwall have it as a bit of a problem. Maybe even still today, some would argue. So that's why my dad chose Arsenal, and then I had no choice really. I was brainwashed from a very young age, got taken to
Yeah.
games, and my dad now, coming up to 60 years old, is still as obsessed with it as he was when he was 15. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I became an Arsenal fan.
Interesting. On the political side, do you still see lingering effects of does Arsenal maybe try to stick to maybe that roots of when they look for players? Like I'm trying to think of the Arsenal lineup, but I mean, do you find there's more ethnic it'd be a more ethnic team than a team like that's less inclusive? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, do you think they try and like, hey, we know that our fans really love that about us, that we were always more inclusive, or is that just a thing of the past now?
I think on the player side, it's probably diluted a little bit, but Arsenal have the
Mm.
Hale End Academy, which is based in East London, which is an area where there are lots of immigrant families or,
Hmm.
you know, second generation immigrants, third generation immigrants. So you do tend to, at Arsenal Football Club, when players are coming through, see all different sort of backgrounds
Yeah.
in terms of the players and where their families are from. For example, Bukayo Saka is one of Arsenal's big stars at the moment. He came
Mm.
through that academy. His family originally are Nigerian. You've got Eddie Nketiah, whose family are, if I'm not mistaken, originally Ghanaian. And you get that sort of diversity coming through the club. But I think the way you can really tell the difference between Arsenal and some of the other London clubs is by the crowd, basically.
Yeah.
When you go to an Arsenal game, you will see so many different cultures, and you will see that at all the Premier League grounds now. Don't get me wrong, but I think at Arsenal, there's more of it. I think the diversity is wider at Arsenal, and that's because of the history. As I say, I think a lot of people, when they came to the UK from wherever it may be, the ones that settled in North London, I think, felt a connection to Arsenal Football Club because of its values, really, and
Yeah,
that's stood them in good stead, and they've continued to build support over the years.
interesting. That's all good to know. Well, now people know that if you don't have a team, Arsenal sounds like a nice team to go watch in London. It's Harry's team.
The
He'll take care
best.
of you. Don't just I'll send it. I'll put his phone number in the info on this podcast. Just hit him up directly.
No
um,
problem.
yeah. So we're gonna go to a sporting event in London. Let's say just generically the top four teams. That's probably what most people are doing, or maybe like a Wembley if there's a cup final there or a big match, or even Wimbledon. I guess if you're into tennis. Is there another like major sporting? Is there an F1 or anything else big in London? That's
No, the F1 takes place at Silverstone, which is north of
oh,
London. It's closer to the Midlands.
mm.
Now that you mentioned Wimbledon, there is AFC Wimbledon Football Club as well, another London-based football club. I
Oh,
forgot that one as well. So there you
yeah.
go.
Oh, okay. Is there anything else like a major event that's typically in? There's NFL games, I guess, and I guess they'll do
So
like
yeah,
WWE and they'll do big boxing matches, right?
yeah. From time to time, they do WWE. Boxing matches take place quite a bit at the O2 Arena,
Mm,
which is it used to be the Millennium Dome. It was a building that was built to celebrate the Millennium,
yeah.
and that then turned into an arena. Sometimes you get big fights at Wembley Arena as well.
Mm,
Um, Tennis, obviously, the Wimbledon Championships are
yeah.
really world famous, so that happens as well around June, July time. More and more NFL games are coming to town. There is rugby as well, which I don't think you guys
Yeah.
play in the States. It's
Not too much, no.
I could compare it sort of to NFL, but it's not the same, really. Just
Yeah.
in terms of the fact that you throw the ball and you smash into each other, that's about
Yeah.
all in terms of the likeness. But yeah, there's always stuff going on. You know, London's
Yeah.
one of the greatest cities on earth, so there's always stuff going on.
Yeah, so maybe if you we'll go through like places to stay, some places, areas to eat, places to have a drink. Maybe give us like two options. One for kind of the guys who want the pubs and for a good football match, and then maybe others for coming for Wimbledon or maybe want a bit more of a classy time when they're there or a good mixture. Some days I just want to go to the pub, some days I want to go get an espresso martini and watch some tennis. So what area of town would you say? Because when I was looking at where to stay, I was like, it seemed like there was four different places, and I had no idea which was what, and it was just overwhelming. Where would you say for the middle of the
Okay,
ground
so
people, and then the upper
okay,
class? And
so if
black.
you're coming to London to watch Premier League football, then you're
Mm,
probably going to watch either, or you're going to want to watch Arsenal, Chelsea, or Tottenham because they are
mm,
the big clubs in London. West Ham are a big club as well, but you know it depends because you might come on a weekend where West Ham are playing Liverpool, and then all of a sudden
mm,
that's an appealing fixture, whereas Arsenal might be at home to Bournemouth, and that's not as appealing. So you
yeah.
know, depending on where you want to go, look, if you stay in central London, you can get everywhere. That's the good
Mm,
thing about London as a city. We've got the underground, which is basically the subway, and there are multiple lines. There's probably 12, 13 lines that will take you into all different parts of the city. Nowhere
mm,
is more than like sort of 40 minutes away on the underground. So you can go pretty much anywhere that you like. But let's use Arsenal or Tottenham as an example, because obviously
mm,
I'm more familiar with the North London area, having grown up here. So if I was to go to Arsenal and I wanted the English football experience,
yeah.
then you would hit the what's called the Holloway Road, which is a long road that leads towards Arsenal Stadium. It kind of links up different parts of the town. Um, if you go along the Holloway Road, there are a ton of places to sit and eat. If you wanted a real sort of English traditional breakfast, which is something that you know football fans tend to do, they go for their English breakfast first, which is bacon, eggs, baked beans, mushrooms, sort of toast, and you know whatever
Isn't
else you want with
isn't
it.
there
Go
a
on.
tomato too?
Yeah, sometimes they grill the
Yeah.
tomatoes or they fry the tomatoes depending on how
Yeah.
you want it. So you'd go and start off. You'd have a little breakfast. There are a few good cafes on Holloway Road that serve that type of breakfast. The names of them escape me, but they're all the same. They all serve
Yeah.
exactly the same breakfast, and
Hmm.
it's all around about the same price. You could probably eat a breakfast for the equivalent of maybe $10,
Yeah.
$10 to $12, and you'll be full up for the whole day. If you eat that, you're fine. You're sorted, and you've
Nice.
lined your stomach nicely to move on to the pubs. Now, around Arsenal Stadium, there's a load of pubs. Arsenal Stadium has, within walking distance, I would say, 3 big underground stations and 2 overground stations. So it's probably the best connected stadium in London in terms of how you get there. Wherever you're coming from
Hmm.
in the city, you will have no problems. Some of the big sort of famous pubs are the Tollington, which is a big pub on the corner of the road that leads up to the stadium. And every time you walk past there, there will be people crowded around outside enjoying their drinks, singing football songs, all of the rest of it. They've got big screens in there. So if there's any games going on before or after, you can take those in there as well. It's really important that when you go to a pub in London to watch football, that you choose the right pubs, in that there are pubs for home supporters and there are pubs for away supporters. Now,
Hmm.
that will mean that you avoid any trouble because, as I say, although all of that stuff's calmed down in comparison to what it was in the 80s and maybe before that, but there is still a little bit of it sometimes. And
Yeah.
that you'll get to the door and you'll know very quickly if you're at the wrong pub because they won't let you in. Sometimes they'll ask you to show your match ticket. They'll then look at where it is that you're sitting if you're not wearing colours of either club, and they'll decide whether to let you in or not. But once you're in, you want to have a pint of beer, don't you? That's what people do when they go to Premier
Yeah.
League games, and you can normally get a pint of beer for around about $4 to $5 or the equivalent. Um, so taking a few of those. What a lot of people like to do as well is visit sort of burger vans. We have burger vans like lining the street. So as you're walking up to the ground, you get that smell of burgers frying and
Yeah.
fried onions and all the rest of it. That's something I always remember when I was a kid and I first started going to football. So you can get that and you can walk and eat if you like. But what people tend to do is go to the cafe in the morning, have a big breakfast, and then that's it food wise. And it's just
Yeah.
about beer. It's just about drinks.
But what?
You can
Because
get,
like
yeah.
when I go travel and I drink a
Mm.
beer, I don't want to look like if you came here and you drank a certain beer, you'd be like, oh, like you poser or whatever. What are like some beers that you have to drink when you're in town? I know there's Guinness. What would you suggest on the lighter side if people can't handle a Guinness?
So Guinness is obviously a really famous Irish drink, but obviously because
Mm,
there's a big Irish population in London, it's really popular here as well.
yeah.
I'm sure it's popular in other parts of the world too. But thinking about it now, England doesn't really have that many of its own standout beers. In fact, I don't think I can think of one.
Yeah.
People tend to go with Stella Artois, which is a Belgian beer. There'll be a lot of Foster's that you can find, which is an Australian beer. Budweiser's popular here. We tended recently to go down the Italian route. Peronis, Moretti
Oh yeah, those are nice.
they've become really popular here. Um, and lately, Asahi, which is a Japanese beer, has sort of been on the rise in London as well. So those
Nice.
are kind of the trendy in fashion beers to go for.
Can you drink a
What
light beer? Because like here, if you ordered like a Coors Light or a XYZ Light, it's like you could, depending what area of the country you're in, you're like, pussy. Like
Yeah,
you gotta drink Bud Heavy or you gotta drink Coors. Is like light beer okay there, or will you look like a little
I
bit of a?
I would never go up to a bar and ask for a light.
Yeah, there we
Now,
go.
I quite enjoy drinking a light from time to time, especially when I'm at home and I'm just having one for the taste of it while I'm
Yeah,
watching a game.
yeah,
I'm not trying to get drunk. I'm not trying to,
yeah,
this is not going to lead to anything. It's just one beer. Then I'm a big
yeah.
fan of the Bud Lights. I've got a load of them in my
Uh-huh.
fridge all the time. But you wouldn't go into a pub and ask for that. I think you'd get
No,
some
that's
funny
good to know.
looks.
Yeah, that's always a good thing to know.
Yeah, you
Great.
definitely get some funny looks. You can also drink and eat inside the stadiums as well, but as you can imagine, there isn't that
Yeah.
much choice of food once you get in, and the prices of the food and the drink once you get inside are extortionate.
Yeah.
I remember maybe 2 months ago arriving at an Arsenal game, really, really hungry, having just come straight from work. I say 2 months ago, 2 months at the back end of last season, I should say.
Yeah.
I remember arriving straight from work and being really, really hungry. And I went and got one slice of pizza and a Coke, and it cost me £12, which is about $16,
Jesus.
$17.
Yeah.
And it wasn't very good either. So I would always advise that you eat and you drink outside. Have a couple of beers inside the stadium, fine. You know, they can't get that wrong, but the food is a
Yeah.
no-go for me.
Yeah. And I know like maybe not know, but Indian food and also like shawarma I always love in London. I think that's like here we don't have many. In Canada we have some shawarma places, but in the US it's like pretty hard to find, just like the jumbo. There's other words for them too, right? Like shawarma is also called, I don't know, what else?
So
Or is that
if
it?
you want a proper shawarma, sort of Middle Eastern, Lebanese style shawarma,
Hmm.
there's a road in central London called Edgware Road, which is full of shawarma shops and places where you can smoke shisha, which is obviously really, really popular in that part of the world as well. It's just a long
Yeah.
old road full of sort of Arabic shops, Lebanese shops, and that's a great place to go and get a shawarma. And they're open all night long, so it doesn't matter what time you finish your night out. You can walk in there and you can grab yourself a nice shawarma wrap and enjoy that. In terms of Indian food, which you're right to say is really, really popular in England, there is
Hmm.
a road in the east of London called Brick Lane, which is famous for two things. So number one is bagels. There are two bagel shops that have been on Brick Lane for maybe 100 years, maybe more, and they are still going. They've been passed on through the families, and they are there on Brick Lane, and you can go and get a salt beef bagel, which is their famous um,
What
sort
is
of
that? Yeah,
speciality.
in my head, I'm just thinking like a bagel with cream cheese. What are the London bagels or
So
the Indian bagels?
the bagel is not an Indian thing, but it's basically like you have a bagel with cream cheese in it. They'll put cream
Yeah.
cheese in it, but they'll also whack a load of salt beef and mustard, and it
Hmm.
becomes quite the sandwich, quite the mouthful. You probably wouldn't fit it
Really?
in your mouth to take a bite. It's that big. Um,
I gotta see what
but yeah,
Googling what
they're
salt beef is.
yeah, go for it.
Hmm.
Type in
What?
salt beef
Oh, is
bagel.
it like corn? Is it like corned beef? Is it the same?
No,
Is that the same
it's
thing?
real.
Oh.
It's real beef. Corned beef is like a replacement. I think is if you type in
Oh.
there you go, you'll see it. It is
Yeah.
that is something that Brick Lane is known for. But at the other end of Brick Lane, which again is a really long road, there is
Yeah.
oh god, I don't even know how many curry houses, famous curry
Hmm.
houses, where you can go and eat Indian food, and that is always buzzing as well. So if you're after Indian food, Brick Lane is the place to go. In which case, you'd be closer geographically to West Ham. You're not a million miles away from Tottenham and Arsenal, but it's
Hmm.
more in the east side of London, and that is very close to an area called Shoreditch, which is a really popular area now to go out and have drinks, which again you could do after the game. Shoreditch has got lots and lots of bars, a few sort of mini kind of clubs, I would say. A lot of the
Hmm.
places there have late licenses open till around about 2, 3 a.m., which is not common in London, by the way. People
Interesting.
seem to think that London is this place where it never stops, and actually it's not. Generally, pubs have to stop serving alcohol at 11 p.m. and they have to
Jesus.
close by 12. So Shoreditch is one of those areas where there is that late licensing, and therefore it's a hotbed of bars, and sort of places to go out and drink. So you'll always find that to be buzzing, and it's quite a casual place. You don't have to be dressed up. You can go in your trainers, in your jeans. There's no requirement in terms of dress code. So Shoreditch is a pretty cool place to go.
Is
If
there
you want to
another
go a
like
little,
club area? Is that where you're going?
so yeah, I was going to say if you want to go like a little bit more up market in terms of your clubs and bars and stuff, then you want to go into the central London area, Soho, Piccadilly, these areas. But you're going to pay probably 3-4 times the price for a drink. You're also going to pay entrance fees in most of these places that you go, at minimum probably of around about £20, which is what, $25, $26. maybe it's slightly more.
Yeah.
So if you want to go to central London clubbing, Piccadilly, Soho, Leicester Square, those types of areas, you're going to pay a premium. Honestly, I don't know if it's just my age, but I prefer to go to Shoreditch these days. I find the vibe is completely different. It's a lot more friendly. It's a lot less pretentious. And,
Hmm.
you got to do the London clubbing scene as well, but at some point. But for
Yeah.
me, I've been there, done it. So my default is to go somewhere like Shoreditch.
Yeah, that's like me, that we have a place called Old Town in Scottsdale. So I used to always be there, but now it's you scale back to the Arcadia. It's a bit more chill, maybe a little bit older, you know, not as crazy expensive. And is
Yeah.
Soho and those places, is that where you also like, what neighborhoods should people stay in? Is that kind of the name of the areas to get a hotel?
Yeah, so if you stay in that type of area, Soho, Leicester Square, Piccadilly, you're going to pay a premium. You
Mm,
really, really are, because it's right in the heart of London. I would advise, if people are happy to travel just a little bit, and when I say a little bit,
mm,
I'm talking 15 minutes on the underground,
yeah.
then you're probably better off staying in areas like Islington, which is still kind of centralish London, but slightly further out.
Mm,
Um, and that would keep you close to central London. You're 10 minutes ride away on the underground. There's also alternative ways of getting there. You could go by bus, you could go by taxi, and it wouldn't cost you very much money.
mm,
Um, and also you can access the likes of Shoreditch from there as well. So staying somewhere close to central but not quite central would save you a
mm,
lot of money. The transport links are pretty good, so I would look at that. Again, it sounds like I'm leaning more and more towards North London, and I'm being a little bit biased, and I am, because that's the part of London that I know better than anywhere else.
yeah.
And I feel like I could give you more relevant information for that. But there are nice areas in South London too. You mentioned Wimbledon and the tennis championships. It's beautiful around there. It's one of the best places in London in terms of sort of, it's clean. It's quite upmarket. There's loads of
Mm,
wonderful places to go and sit and have lunch and all the rest of it. But it is really expensive. And I don't know, for me, sometimes you feel like it's nice to do, like to experience it, but would I
yeah.
keep going back there? I probably wouldn't. But it's something that you'd want to see. Um, Camden is a nice place as well in North London, full of bars, full of pubs.
I've
Again,
heard
it's
of
an
that
area
one.
where yeah, there's a lot more. There's a lot more late licenses there. There's a market in Camden Lock, which is open during the day, and it sells all kinds of strange things that you probably wouldn't find anywhere else. And you
Yeah.
can walk down the river and really sort of enjoy your time there. Food markets, great place at night, but Camden's a great place in the day as well. So if you could stay close to Camden, again, that would tick that box. You'd be close to central London. You'd be able to go to the likes of Shoreditch. Even if you wanted to go to Wimbledon, it's like 20 minutes on the Northern Line, which is one of the underground lines. It's really
Yeah.
easy to get about.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like for the casual footballer or the casual fan in town, Camden and kind of Islington would be the spot to hit. If you got a bit of quid, then go down to like you're saying, more central London. All good info. Is there any like must eat things that you also suggest? I know you mentioned the English breakfast. What else is kind of like an English staple that people, is there anything they have to do?
So I guess one of the other things that is quite sort of well known when it comes to England is a Sunday roast dinner. Whether that be roast chicken, roast beef, roast lamb, with what's called Yorkshire puddings. I don't know if you've ever tried those before.
I don't know if I've
Um,
tried it. I know what you're talking about though.
yeah, that's okay. That's a really, really sort of British thing. I got to
Hmm.
say, personally, for me, it doesn't really do it. But
Yeah.
if you wanted to try that, there are a lot of pubs which are also at the same time called carveries, where you go in. You sit down, you get a table, you say, I want a serving at the carvery. You basically pay a set price, and you can go up as many times as you want, and they'll cut bits of meat and put them sort of in your plate for you. I would say that London is one of the most multicultural places on earth. And as a result of
Yeah.
that, there are so many amazing restaurants serving all different types of food. And I'm sorry to say
Yeah.
this, it might upset people. but English food, or what we call English food, is right at the bottom of the list. You could go.
I
You,
agree.
what is English food? Like a roast
Yeah.
dinner, a breakfast. Like you could go to a lovely Italian restaurant. You could go to a Greek
Uh-huh.
restaurant. There's Turkish restaurants, Lebanese restaurants, Chinese, Thai. There is so much to experience and to try. Steak houses. There's everything.
Hmm.
If you was to sort of waste one of your nights going and having a roast dinner, I'd be a bit disappointed in you, I have to say.
Yeah, I concur. Yeah, even like the English breakfast. I'm like, I don't want beans or tomatoes or mushrooms and like no, this is and then also you don't cook your bacon all the way through, which is really odd. Is
I'll tell
that
you what, that there's no better bacon than the bacon in England. That's where I will defend them.
yeah.
That's where I will defend them. You guys cremate it, basically.
Yours is still alive. It's crazy. Is there like any other I know you kind of mentioned the India area and the Middle Eastern area. Is there like a Chinatown that's cool to check out, or some sort of either like cultural like major center?
Yeah, we have a Chinatown, which is based in the Soho area, right in the heart of London. Lots and lots of Chinese restaurants over the space of 2 or 3 streets. I would say that the food there is a little bit overrated. I think there are better Chinese restaurants in London.
Hmm.
And once you enter Chinatown, you are paying a premium.
Yeah,
So you could go to a beautiful Chinese restaurant and have a really nice meal for a reasonable price. The minute you go into Chinatown, it sort of doubles in price. And I don't even
yeah,
think the standard of the food there is that great. What you tend to find is that, people gravitate towards it because it's a big tourist attraction, and actually they don't get value for money. And those restaurants are so desperate to get so many people in and out that they'll serve you really quickly. Your meal will be rushed. You won't enjoy it. I've had many experiences in
yeah.
Chinatown. The only good thing is that in central London, after a certain time, probably after about midnight, there isn't that many places to get food apart from fast food joints like McDonald's and Burger King. But
Hmm.
Chinatown, there's a few restaurants in there that stay open really late, and I'm talking like 3, 4 a.m. So if you're hungry and there's nothing else going on, then I would say go there. But at peak times, I would probably avoid that as well. Um, Trafalgar Square is a place you got to visit. Buckingham Palace is a place that you got to visit. All of these places
Hmm.
are within walking distance of each other. You can travel
Okay.
around on the bus or you can travel around by train, but if you are happy to walk and the weather's good, then I would say, go for the walk. It's amazing. You can go right up to Buckingham Palace. Then you can go along the Mall to Trafalgar Square. Once you're there, you're not far away from Oxford Street, which is the big shopping street in the heart of London, where there's big department stores and lots of famous shops. Harrods is a big one for people coming to London that they like to visit, a famous department store. That's in Knightsbridge. That's a bit further away, so you might have to hop
Hmm.
on a underground train just for a few minutes to get there. But pretty much everything in central London, if you've got the time and the patience and you're able, you can walk. And that's what's really nice about London. Although there's tons of people and everybody feels squashed in, it isn't actually that big, not in comparison to some of you guys' cities and states, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, I always tell people a walking tour is the best way to do it. There's always just so many random things you'll come across you didn't know existed, or like a little coffee shop, or a little restaurant, or some food vendor. I think that's always the best way to check the stuff out, especially if it's a walking city like that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. The people in London are not always very friendly, just as a general thing. So don't be offended if you say hi to someone and they don't smile back, or you sit down on the train and somebody decides that they're going to move 2 seats away because you've sat next to them. It's just the way people are here.
That's
It's sort of reflective of the weather in many ways, miserable at times, but nice at times too.
yeah, and then if you land in London, Heathrow is typically where you'd land. There's a tube there. I've been there before. There's a tube that can take you pretty much everywhere, right? The underground. So you don't
Yeah,
need a cab.
so
You don't need to do any of that.
no, if you land at Heathrow, you can use either the Piccadilly line to get into central London. They recently created a new line called the Elizabeth line, which is amazing. It's brand new. The trains are brand new, air conditioned. and it's much faster as well. So you can now get from Heathrow to central London in about 30 minutes,
Nice.
which is really, really easy. So, yeah, from Heathrow, it's easy. There are other London airports, but I guess if you're coming sort of on a long haul flight, the likelihood is you're going to come to London Heathrow or to Gatwick. Gatwick is a little bit harder to get from. There is a train called the Gatwick Express that takes you into Victoria, which is in central London, and from there you can change lines to get to wherever you want to get. But from Gatwick to Victoria, it's probably about 45 to 50 minutes on that train. So that's a bit further out of London.
Yeah.
It's south of London, Gatwick Airport, whereas Heathrow is just to the west and is a lot closer.
Yeah, and for people traveling town who aren't familiar with riding like a train and they think they might get lost, that's really the way to go though, because I'm sure if you tried to drive from Heathrow into central London, depending on the day, that could take twice as long, 3 times as long versus a 30-minute tube, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've lived in London all my life. I've got a car and it basically sits on my driveway most days because a lot of my work is in central London or in different parts of London. And A, it takes too long to get everywhere because the traffic is awful. B, it
Mm-hmm.
costs crazy money because the fuel prices are nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Parking prices are even worse. You know, you drive somewhere, you
Yeah.
want to park your car for a few hours. Sometimes you can spend up to £50 just to park your car if you're going for a meal
Yeah.
in central London, which is the cost of the meal. It's nuts.
Yeah.
And not so long ago, they introduced what's called the congestion charge in and around the central London area. So basically, there were concerns around A, the traffic, but B, the pollution because of how many vehicles were going in and out of London. So they basically put a limit that says if you're going into central London and you're not a taxi and you're not an emergency vehicle or a key worker, as they call it, you have to pay near enough £20 a day to drive your car into the central part of London.
Oh my
And if you
God.
forget to pay it, you'll get a fine through the post 3-4 weeks later of 4 or 5 times that amount. So you got to be really careful with that. Also, if your car gives off too many emissions, then you also have to pay a charge to get into even the wider London area, which is a really new thing. So even where I live here on the outskirts of North London, I can't drive 10 minutes down the road in a car that gives off too many emissions without paying £15. So
Yeesh.
it's
So wild.
they're trying to make it, they're trying to discourage people from driving in the central
Yeah.
London
Which I
area.
guess
And
overall is like a good thing for the environment.
yeah, for sure. And they are getting there. I know a lot of people are frustrated with it. You know, there's people of a
Mhm.
certain generation that always did it
Yeah.
and don't want to change, and that's fine. But
Yeah.
that's the way it's headed.
Yeah. Have you been to Singapore?
No, I
Oh, because
haven't.
in
No.
Singapore, it's similar idea. I think like to get your car, you can buy a car cars are expensive anyways, but then to get it registered is like as much as a car. So it's like $10,000 a year type thing. And that's fully just to make you, ride public transportation and keep it because it's like the cleanest city on earth. It's outrageous. And that's part of the reason they have all those things in place.
Yeah, it
So,
makes sense. I guess if it's
yeah.
normal for you, then it doesn't come as a big shock. And
Hmm.
I wouldn't advise anyone that's coming to London and doesn't know the roads and doesn't know where they're going to even try and drive
Hmm.
because it's always so busy. There's so many complicated sort of road systems. You can easily get lost,
Yeah.
and I just don't think it's worth it really.
Yeah, that's fair. I got another thing before we go, unless you have more stuff, but I have one Englandism or Londonism that and I don't even know if that's the right term, but like betting. I remember being in London and there was like a betting booth on every corner of every street. Is that still a thing?
Yeah, so betting, gambling is a massive, massive thing.
Yeah.
You know, Vegas has its casinos. That's not the case in London. There are some casinos in central
Uh,
London, but predominantly it's sports betting, and in
yeah.
particular football betting.
And
Also,
that's what I
horse
mean. Yeah.
racing. Horse racing is a big deal here in England. There's a lot of bets that go in on that, and there is literally a betting shop on every corner.
Yeah.
You know, over the last couple of years, they've reduced a little bit because of the fact that people have moved to online. They can do it on the apps on their phones and stuff. But whenever I speak to sort of people from the States, they're always a bit surprised by that, because I know that gambling isn't even legal in all of the states yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I did some work for a gambling company in the States maybe a year ago. And I remember having to go through this long licensing process to sort of get on their system to be able to do work for them. Had to go through all these background checks. And to me, that was wild, because here you can gamble, you can bet wherever you want. And
Yeah.
yeah, it is a big thing. It is a bit of a problem as well. You're starting to see sort of football clubs, for example, try and move away from it. So they passed a law that in the next couple of years, no clubs will be able to have sponsors of gambling companies on their shirts, which has been a big thing for
Okay.
years, and obviously
Yeah.
encourages that. But yeah, it is a big thing in London for sure, but
Well, because I would
particularly
see
on sport.
they're like tiny little shops. Or I'm sure there's different sizes, but I would see a tiny little shop on a corner, like no bigger than a cafe, and just like 50 men just standing outside, inside, watching, doing a million. I had no idea what was going on. I was ignorant to sports betting at the time, but it was like its
Yeah,
whole ecosystem. It was crazy. But if you
yeah,
want, I feel
they
like if
will
you're on
put.
a trip, you got to experience it, right? Can you
Yeah,
have
you
like a
you
pint
just
outside, or is that legal?
Uh, no, you can't drink at them. You tend to
Okay.
find, without sort of stereotyping, you tend to find sort of an older generation of people in there that will go there in the morning, sit down with their friends, watch all the horse racing throughout the day and just bet on it. And there'll be one poor soul at the desk whose job it is to literally put on their bets as they keep coming up.
Yeah.
A lot of them use it as a social thing as well. It was a big social thing before, but
Mhm.
it has died down quite a bit now. And the shops are still there. You have to walk into a shop and place a bet one day just for the fun of it. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember even before I was at the legal age, I would walk in sometimes to the one near where I lived, and let me put £10 on this game of football or whatever, and it was a
Yeah.
buzz. It was enjoyable.
Oh yeah.
Um, but yeah, it is a very British thing, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Is there anything else like that that's sort of just a unique kind of must do, whether it's really cool to do or not cool to do, that's something interesting, or is that kind of, I know we covered a lot.
Um, that's pretty much everything. But fish and chips, you have to try fish and
Oh
chips.
yeah.
Um, Cod in batter, basically, fried with a portion of chips. Lots of salt and vinegar. That's a really
Mhm.
British thing as well, and you can associate that quite a bit with football as well. There's lots of fish and chip shops around football grounds. Yeah, that's a really, really British thing as well. As you say, going for an Indian meal is a really British thing, even though it's Indian, which is
Yeah.
wild to me, but it is what it is. And yeah, those are kind of the main things. But wherever you stay in London, you'll be able to get around.
Yeah.
Particularly if you stay just slightly north of the river, close to central London. But if you go slightly east or slightly west and you come out of that hot spot, you'll probably find much more affordable accommodation. But
Yeah.
you can rest assured that you can travel wherever you need to, and it won't be a problem.
Perfect. Well, my plan is to get out there next spring, so I'll come see you. I'll stay in your
100%. You need
gaff.
to let me know when you're coming.
Yeah.
Definitely. Why not? Let me know when you're coming.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be in Camden because that's the hot spot, and I'll go to Shoreditch, get some pints. That sounds lovely. And then yeah, you can catch Harry on TalkSport, BBC, Sky Sports, a ton of things. A lot of Arsenal. You do a ton of Arsenal stuff, right?
Yeah, Arsenal's my team, so
Hmm.
people tend to hire me more for Arsenal because they know that A, I know a little bit more about them than the other clubs, but B,
Yeah.
there's no point in trying to get me working as a neutral on other things. I do it from time to time, but I
Yeah.
think everybody can just see right through me, so they figure it's better
Yeah.
just to put me on the Arsenal stuff.
That's great. The Arsenal expert. Well, I appreciate it, Harry. It was a pleasure having time with you. Just go check him out, inspiretravellead.com as well. And I'll chat you with you soon. All right, mate?
Definitely, man. Thank you so much for having me. Enjoy.
All right, cheers.